Good morning and welcome back to Mindful Mischief. I'm Lisa Feitz, school psychologist here at Union North, and I'm really excited to be our host for episode 2. Just to remind everyone, our goal for this podcast is to share information with our parents in our community in a way that's accessible, easy to understand, and fun to listen to. Last time, Dr. Martinez dove into how our school kind of came across conscious discipline and the process we've been through. And so today, I'd like to give our hosts an opportunity to share a little bit more about themselves so that you guys can get to know us and our history and why we love LaVille. So Mrs. Havermail, I'm going to let you go first. How did you end up at LaVille? Tell us about yourself, why you love it here.
Yeah, so my name is Kari Havermail. I am currently the school counselor at the elementary alongside Miss Stilson, and I ended up at LaVille. I was a licensed mental health counselor, and when 2020 hit, I needed something that would be stable and I could spend time with my new son who was coming into the world, but also I really saw an impact with when I was a skills coach at the Bowen Center, just seeing how many kids really truly needed someone to talk to that were not my client. And so I had started there and just really, I saw an opening. I had a friend who had the position and had left, and I took my shot, and I was able to get it, and it was wonderful. I love LaVille because the community is just so cool. I wasn't raised here, but seeing just all the people who truly care for the kids is really, really special. So that is why I'm here.
Mm-hmm. Great. Dr. Martinez?
Yeah, so this is my second year here at LaVille. Prior to that, I spent 18 years in the charter school world. So I taught 5 years in East Chicago, spent 13 years as an administrator in Chesterton at a charter school. And I just came to a point where it was like, am I spending the entirety of my career with charters, or do I need to branch out and experience something a little bit different? So did some interviews and immediately connected with the people at LaVille through all the interview processes, and it's just been probably the best decision of my life, professionally speaking, because I get to work with fantastic people like you, and then the rest of our staff, then the parents, and it's just a great community here at a great school district. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. A little bit about myself. This is actually year 10 for me at LaVille. I know, wow. 10 years, right? So when I'm sitting in a room with staff and I'm looking around, I consider myself kind of young and sprightly, but it turns out that I am on the higher end of the people that have been here at LaVille. And so that's like kind of a scary tipping point to be like, I'm no longer in the young crowd. Now I'm with the people that have been here for a really long time. Mm-hmm. So I've got 2 little girls at home. I've got a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old. My husband is a LaVille graduate. That's kind of how I ended up here. I student taught, and coincidentally, both of our guests here have been with me since the beginning of my professional journey. Mm-hmm. I student taught in special education, taught for a couple of years, and then my principal at the time, great guy, encouraged me to take a chance on myself and went back to school for school psychology. All the chips kind of fell in the right direction, and now I'm here. So I live in district. I live in the community. I think there's something really impactful and huge about living in the community that you serve, and I love LaVille. I've always said I'm going to retire from here, and I don't know if that's something, like, I can't define why I love it. It's more of a feeling and an emotion that's behind it, because the community is so strong, and there is something really special, I think, about working alongside of adults that you would trust your own child with. And I think that's probably the greatest compliment I can give the staff that I work with, is that I would put my daughters in any of their classrooms, or I would trust my daughter in any of the people's offices that I work with. Absolutely. So that's enough about me. Without further ado, our podcast, it wouldn't be complete without our special guests. So I'm excited to say, like I mentioned, the 2 people here have been with me since the beginning. So it's actually just really special to me that you're both here. And I have so much love and respect for both of you guys. So joining us today is a current school board member, Dawn Amor. and parent and past educator, Kenny Shirley. So welcome, you guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
I know this is definitely out of both of your comfort zones. And not something that either one of you guys would naturally gravitate towards, unlike myself. But let's start by sharing a little bit about yourself. Kenny, we'll start with you.
All right.
If you'll give us like a 1-minute spiel about who you are, your connection and background to LaVille. I know it runs deep, but also one question. I want you to tell us one movie or TV show you could watch over and over again and never get bored of it.
Okay. My name's Kenny Shirley. Born and, well, actually I was not born here, but I was raised here. So I spent my entire life, actually I've spent 38 years in the Union North School District, 13 as a student, and 25 as a teacher and educator or administrator. We live in district. I have a son who is a senior and a daughter who's a 4th grader here at LaVille. My wife graduated from LaVille. My parents both graduated from LaVille. So the ties are strong here. And I love our little school. Sometimes it seems a little bigger than it actually is in the elementary side of things. And I just want to say that after leaving LaVille and going out into the real world and then getting the call from Dr. Martinez asking to do this and reading what you sent us and everything, it brought back a lot of memories, good and bad, you know, because this is it's a complicated subject. And coming from the parent perspective, parenting is hard. But then when I look at this from the teacher side, wow, it is a challenge for you guys. So I applaud everything that the staff does for our kids. As far as a movie, no. I can't tell you last time I watched a movie because I don't sit that long. I mean, honestly, when I read that, I was thinking probably the last movie was the original Top Gun that I have sat and watched the whole thing. But TV show, different story because they're an hour or less. Without a doubt, Survivor.
Just over and over again, you're watching Survivor?
I will watch Survivor.
Watching people that are hungry on the beach?
I've never missed an episode.
Kenny, I've watched all of the episodes.
No.
I'm a big fan.
Yes, I love.
Oh, cool.
I've never watched. Have you seen The Traitors on Peacock?
That is my next favorite.
It's worth it.
Yes.
We watched it as a family. So my
we
7-year-old likes it.
Well, we
the
watch
5-year-old likes it.
Traitors
it's
Canada,
good.
Traitors UK.
We've not seen the other ones, just the American
We
version.
watch them.
But
Yes, I would go on Survivor today.
Just went up
Yes.
here. So cool.
Yes. Strategy.
You go
You talk about
hungry.
strategy.
That's not the whole
It's
piece,
not the-
though.
it's
There's
not
a
the-
big emotional and
Yes,
relational piece
right.
you gotta play.
We're going to dig into that
It's a
a little
game.
deeper.
It's a game.
Later, at another time.
the gameplay, right? That's
Yeah,
what they always say,
exactly.
gameplay.
Right.
Okay, Dawn, your turn. Same question, who you are, your family background and connection, and your favorite movie or TV show.
Sure. So, did not grow up here. Grew up in the Goshen Middlebury area, but I've now been in Lakeville. I met Brent in 1990. We were married in 91, and I moved here to Lakeville. So we're going on 34 years here. He was, raised here and went through LaVille system. And then we had 3 beautiful children. They were all, graduated through the LaVille system, went on to, college and to do their own great things. And I was lucky enough, I think Nicholas was in 5th grade when I came, when the then infamous John Farthing called me and said, come work for me. And I was like, oh, no, I don't think so. And John and I had run the PTO for years, and he talked me into it, and one of the best things I ever did. Yes. So I was there for just, I think, shy of 20 years. I worked for Kenny for several of those years. And then Kenny also actually had Nicholas in class, so I knew Kenny as a teacher.
Right.
And now, I've gone back into the private sector, and actually last night was the first night I had been back at the elementary school. I had walked to the gym once, probably about a year ago. And so it was a flood of memories, very good memories. I love this community, and I've always felt very loved by this community. And I think that's at the base of it. If even in those hard times and hard conversations and everything, if you love those around you, you're not going to go wrong. And I think that's what we do at LaVille very well.
Right.
Very well. So I'm really excited for now to be on the school board and see, how I can serve in that way.
What about a movie or TV show?
Oh, that's easy. If I'm just gonna go to a TV show, it's Andy Griffith all day long, and I can pretty much quote any episode. Yeah. So never seen Survivor.
Never.
Wow.
I have not.
Okay.
Just haven't. But I might.
New
Maybe I
episode
should.
starts next Wednesday.
They're not a sponsor.
No, we're not.
Thank you both.
Can I just interject?
Well,
So when
yeah.
I called both of them, because we had met to talk about potential guests, and they're like, oh, we've got to put Dawn and Ken on together. And both of their responses was absolutely anything you need. And I think that just speaks to kind of the character and their connection to LaVille.
Right.
And that's just that piece that not being from LaVille is very appreciated.
Sure.
So thank you again for being
Not a
here.
problem.
Yeah.
I know you guys are both itching to share your movie or TV show. So what is it?
I love Survivor. Anytime I'm like super stressed, my husband will know like Survivor's back on. Where are we starting over? The season where the Game Changers come back on, that's currently where I'm at.
How
'cause
many
I will just go
seasons
back.
are there?
Like,
Gotta be over 20, right?
no, there's
I don't know.
20 something. Yeah, like
I
it's
don't know.
insane.
Yeah, it's-
But I
Okay.
started
It's a lot.
at the very beginning. Paramount has all of them. Not plugging it, but just
Unless they want to sponsor.
unless they want to. Or I'll go out on the beaches. Absolutely. It's really cool to watch. Just all the. Yeah, there's a lot to play. As a psychologist, I feel like you could really enjoy it.
Yeah, I just try not to like. I just try to decompress differently.
Try to eat.
Yeah.
Whatever you gotta do.
try
So
to
watch a good cooking show. Whatever
Yeah.
you gotta do. You
Right.
Know? But yeah.
Well, what about you?
We're a TV family, so there's lots of shows. I cycle through The Office, Superstore. Currently, I'm rewatching Seinfeld for probably the
Oh,
75th
sweet.
time.
Oh, yeah, that's a good
So
one.
that's
Yeah.
queued up in my Netflix, the
Not
Seinfeld.
Ted Lasso. I'm
Well,
confused.
that's always there too, yeah. There's just too many. They just play in the background doing dishes or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah. For me, my husband would want me to say Twister. That's his favorite movie.
Not
and
Twisters.
Not to be confused with Twisters. Just Twister. And if I would watch that as often as he would like me to, that would make him really happy. But I'm more of like a Gilmore Girls, New Girl, maybe even Friends type of thing. Something that's a lot lighter than
New Girl's a good one. Yeah.
any of that. Something that I can put on the background and not have to think about. But so as we get into this, we're going to have 10 video podcasts. So this is episode 2. Each one is going to focus on the different chapters from Conscious Discipline. And I'm just going to refer to her as Dr. Becky.
Dr. Becky.
We're hoping that Dr. Becky contacts us and we hit big time for our
okay.
podcast. And she's like, let me get you guys here a deal. But, or she's going to send us a cease and desist and say, stop talking about it.
50-50, really.
We're hoping it's
Regardless, each episode's going to feature a different one of us leading the conversation with different guests. Last time, Dr. Martinez talked about chapter 1. Before we dive into chapter 2, will you just give us
Yep.
a recap quick about that?
Yeah, so chapter 1 really kind of gave some background and laid the groundwork for why there needs to be this shift in the way we approach discipline. One of the data pieces we mentioned was around 64% of students experience some type of trauma. And that's kind of reason enough why traditional discipline measures don't work, right? Like, just because I say you do something, that's just not the way of the world anymore. Another point was that, as adults, it starts with us, because if we can't maintain a regulated state, how can we expect our students to stay regulated and be functional, right? So it really starts with us and how we model ourselves. There was the piece about how connections and relationships can really greatly impact others around us and their behaviors and actions. If there's a connection here, right, then we're willing to put our best behavior and our best foot forward and work towards something. Kind of like how you chose to be here today, even going outside your comfort zone.
Sure.
If we weren't all in our right executive functioning state, or if our relationship was tattered, this probably wouldn't happen. But we're
Right.
able to come together because we do have connections, we do have relationships. And then the last point was just that idea of conflict, how it's an opportunity to teach, not something to steer away from, but to embrace, because it creates an opportunity for us to learn from each other, and then grow and move forward.
Great. Do you have anything you want to add about any of that?
I think just another piece is the pause for us to be able to stop internally and make a wise choice versus just responding emotionally is something that we've been reflecting on a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so jumping into chapter 2 is all about the brain state model, and as a psychologist, this is kind of my jam, right? Neuroscience is super interesting to me. The fact of the matter is this chapter is really, really big, and there's a lot of things to cover, and it can also get really complicated and kind of deep. So I'm going to do my best to pare this down in really simple terms, and keep it as accessible and as understandable for everyone that may not love the brain as much as I do. But I did find it really relatable and enjoyable because I have some background information. But one of the things, we've been saying this in education for a really long time, behavior is a form of communication. And that's really where this chapter starts, is reframing behavior as something we need to stop or something we need to control, and rethinking it as something that's being communicated to us as in, like, this is a skill that I don't have. It's a lagging skill, or it's there's a deficit, or I have a need that's not being met. So if we can make that simple switch in our brain of seeing it as communication or an unmet need or a skill that I don't have, it kind of automatically takes the negative connotation away from the behavior. They also used an analogy, and I love this analogy mainly because I love the movie Titanic. Maybe I should have said that, because I could watch that over and over again, but it's too long. So an iceberg, the tip above the water, the piece that we see is the behavior. That's our external behavior. It's the only piece that people see. Our internal state, so all of our consciousness, all of our unconsciousness, the beliefs about the world, our beliefs about ourselves, our personality, our trauma, all the things that make up who we are is what's below the surface. So the tip of the iceberg didn't sink the Titanic. It was what they didn't see that did. So if we also retrain our brain to see everybody as, okay, I'm only seeing the tip of the iceberg. What are they bringing? What else are they bringing to the table that's impacting their external behavior? How can we get through these processes and these problem-solving conflicts differently? Does anybody have any connections or anything about the iceberg that they want to share before I go on? This next statement was huge for me, and I have it like highlighted and I have it written down. Our internal state dictates our external behavior. There's a lot of gravity behind that, and it seems really simple, but I'm going to say it again because I think that it's just really important. So our internal state, everything that's happening inside is affecting how we behave outwardly. An example of my internal state dictating my external behavior, we already joked about this morning, is that I hate work mornings. I hate mornings Monday through Friday. It's actually the bane of my existence. There is nothing that I despise or look forward to least than getting up, getting ready for work, and getting 2 tiny people out of the house and be on time. You can joke, I struggle to be on time. It is not something that I've always struggled to do. Actually, before I had children, I was like always early, and I was always one of the first people in the building. That's just changed for me. Not to be confused with like weekend mornings. Like, I really love a Saturday morning where I can like drink my coffee and read my book while my kids are playing, and people can eat breakfast at their leisure if they want to, if they don't want to. But I'm just not a morning person, right? Like, I don't like to get out of bed. I snooze too long. I don't actually like to make myself look presentable. And I'm just like actually grumpy. I know that's hard to believe. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Unfortunately for me, I've also bestowed these genetics on my 3-year-old. So lucky for her and we both hate mornings. So typically I'm frustrated and I'm rushed and I'm annoyed. So those internal things, my beliefs about mornings, the things that I've told myself, my inability to like wake up on time, then basically create problems for me in the fact that like I get frustrated with things I normally wouldn't be frustrated with. Like I get really frustrated with the car seat buckles, especially when a tiny person arches their back. I get really frustrated that the toddler left her baby on the kitchen table for the 3rd time this week and I've already pulled out of the driveway. Later in the day, once I've gone about and I've regulated myself and we're not in any sort of time crunch, those things don't bother me. But in the morning, I'm annoyed and probably really demanding all of my own doing, right? If I could just get up earlier, none of these things would be an issue. But my internal state every single morning dictates my external behavior. So that's a me problem. I'm working on it. Anybody else have an internal and external example they want to share so I don't feel like a terrible parent?
I mean, I do the same thing. I've got an almost 5-year-old, so I've had a little more time with that. But then I have an almost 2 and an almost 1-year-old. So getting all of the kids into the car, and where you might come out as like that annoyed and angry, I'm anxious. And so when I go to pull my 5-year-old almost like off of my body, he is anxious. And like stepping back when I leave, I'm like, man, I did not mean to give that to you, and I am so sorry. But I do that, and even just in the hallway sometimes I'm so focused on what's going on, and when I need to step back, that Mrs. Ashenbrenner will be like, are you doing okay? You know, like they see it. We see it in our body language and those things, and I think it's important that we, are able to take that step back.
Anything from the private sector?
No, I mean, it's all, I think we've all been there, right? We all know whether or not we're going to, be able to pinpoint it right now. But, right, we all know that. It's in that moment, recognizing it, and then being able to change the behavior or change the mindset or change the, I mean, we're all in the same boat. And which I think is what I learned the most in going through it is it's all very common sense, very like, we all know it.
Right.
This isn't really new, right?
Well, and we've heard it before, right? And that's how you know, it's quality information and thoughtful information because it's not brand new.
Right.
It's got substance and it's got history behind it. It's repetitive, right? I think the thing for me is I find myself being more reflective with my interactions, either with my kids or with students at school. And I'm like, oh, that wasn't very conscious discipline of me. And I'm like, but if I didn't know about conscious discipline, would I reflect in the same way? So it's in some ways a blessing, but also like a curse because then I find myself questioning, like, oh, maybe I didn't do that the best, or maybe I didn't handle that the best. So I think it's just part of the growth process, right?
Right. And I think you take those situations, just like you said, you reflect on them, how you handle that next time. What did you learn?
Yep.
And for example, your mornings.
Unfortunately, it's just become a lifestyle.
But you can learn from that and grow. And I think that's what I have done. Like Dr. Martinez said, when I got this information from you guys, and it brought back a lot of memories, and I was not necessarily second my guessing, but there were certain situations that came up in my mind. I was like, how did I really handle that? And then in my current situation outside of the school, it's helped me be a better business owner because of what I have learned as an administrator and dealing with angry parents or disrupted children and things like that. So it just, I think you gotta learn. We all make mistakes, but how you come back next time and make it better.
That's a good point.
So there are 3 brain states that conscious discipline is built on, and they really lay the foundation for everything moving forward of like, okay, recognizing the brain state our student is in, how do we get them to the executive state from where they're at, but first we need to recognize where they are. And this is really the bulk of the chapter. So the first state is the survival state, and the question that the student is asking is, am I safe? The need that's unmet is like, I need somebody to tell me that my basic needs are met, I'm safe, all of the things I need to survive are in place. We know these students. These students are the runners. These students are the ones that are running out of the classroom, hopefully not running out of the building, but we've experienced that. They're the table flippers, they're the room wreckers, okay? So these are the students that really, for the majority of parents, that they're concerned about that this student is in their child's class. These kids are living in the survival state. So your brainstem is your oldest, it's your most primitive area of your brain, and its job is to take care of all your bodily functions so that you can stay safe. So like if I'm being chased by a tiger, I don't want to have to tell my heart to beat. I don't want to tell my lungs that they have to breathe. I don't want to have to tell my adrenal glands to let all the adrenaline go so that I can run fast. Send all the blood to my core organs and out of my extremities. That all happens because this is where our fight, flight, and freeze response is triggered. So that takes care of all of those pieces of your body. But the kids that are here, they're anxious, they're scared, they're depressed, and they feel threatened and they're reactive. So their behavior is big and it's explosive. Dr. Martinez mentioned it, we mentioned it in our last episode, it's 60% or more kids are bringing in a whole bag of trauma and things with them all the time that may affect this, right? Have they eaten? Did they sleep last night? Were they unable to sleep because their home was unsafe? So this is where those basic needs kind of come into place. And for everybody in education, we all know what Maslow's hierarchy is. But this is the bottom of it. And for us, these are really challenging kids because they're not necessarily using words or telling us how we can help all the time, because I don't think they recognize how they can be helped and what they need. So we've got to do the digging and the asking the questions and figuring out what they need to get through that. The next brain state is the emotional state, and this is in the limbic system. These students are asked, am I loved? They're seeking connection. They're seeking relationships. So basically, they're out of the survival state. Their basic needs are met. They feel safe, but now they need to know somebody likes them. And it isn't easy to like everyone. And I think as educators, people assume that we like connect and love all these students, and we do. We love them, but it is possible to not like all of our students, and like that's just human, that our personalities don't jive. So I want to give some grace to our administrators there as like our administrators and our teachers that we don't have to like everyone to love everyone and to teach them, but this is a hard one too, because these are the kids that are criers and yellers or screamers, or maybe the first grader that told me I was fat 2 weeks ago. These are the students that are saying really hurtful things because they're hurting and they're looking.
Hurt people hurt people.
Exactly. They're looking for the adults that are going to still be there and connect with them and show them that they care after these outbursts. The world isn't going their way, right? And they're seeking connection. They're sad, they're hurt, they're frustrated, they're feeling guilt, all of those things. This limbic system is the gatekeeper of the brain. So it's regulating all the information and energy and deciding what to do with it and where to go from here. One piece that is important in this chapter, this piece of the chapter, is the CD-ROM. And I feel like we could go on and on about this, and basically the premise is all of the adults in our life, whether they're teachers, whether our parents or family members, have given us internal dialogue about ourselves. And a lot of times that internal dialogue that we've heard is inaccurate, especially if our parents or the adults haven't been supportive and haven't created safe environments for us. So, for example, my mom may have said, you didn't do well enough on this test. And what I heard was, I'm dumb. Okay, and so that's not accurate. It's not necessarily true, and it's probably not even what she meant. But when I don't do well and I don't perform well on something, my CD-ROM says, you're dumb. Right? Or my dad said, you didn't give enough effort in that basketball game. And what I hear is, I'm lazy. And then the next time I don't perform athletically, my CD-ROM is saying, I'm lazy, I'm not good enough, all of those things. So our CD-ROM is generational. It's often inaccurate, but that's kind of what we're fighting against in the emotional system. Especially when we have students who are coming with that trauma, who may have been abused. That CD-ROM is not even like a CD, man. It's just ingrained in there. It's carved. And those are things that we're working against. that make sense? Did I
yeah.
explain that well enough?
Like when we're having those moments and we go back to that emotion, we hear those things, those negative things about ourselves too, right? So, and even if it's like something similar, our brain is always perceiving what is coming next, and so we hear those things even before sometimes an event even happens.
And I think there's a lot to say about the generational piece here, because love my parents, right? But my mom, and she would be okay that I share this, my mom was abused as a child. So her parenting was then impacted by that experience.
Sure.
And I wasn't abused in any way, but my mom was hard to please, right? Like she had really high expectations. But a lot of that was based on her feeling like she was never good enough. So as we become parents and as we become educators, we're fighting against these generational traumas that happened, and just kind of rewriting the history. When you know better, you do better. The last executive state, the last one, is what we all want our students to walk into our classroom in. They're ready to learn. They're asking, what can I learn? They're regulated. They have a pause and plan response. They're ready to problem solve. They're calm. They're content. In undergrad, when I was going to school to be a teacher, in my mind, this is what I envisioned my entire classroom being. Like, I'm gonna walk in, these students are ready to learn, they like me, all of their basic needs are met, no one's going to misbehave, and they're going to collect all the information that I am going to bestow on them. Reality taught me something a little bit different, and that is not necessarily the case. There are going to be some students who are here and ready to go as soon as they walk in the door, but the reality of that is actually the minority of students. The challenge becomes for us as teachers is how do we get students that are in the survival state from the survival state to the emotional state to the executive state. And the fluctuation that can happen in one day. A student can walk in the executive state and one thing goes wrong and bam, we're in the emotional state. And so it's not only recognizing where they're at in the need, but then also the process of how do I get them ready to learn? And if it feels really big, it's because it is really big. And that's really, really difficult when you're looking at a room of 26 individual personalities and histories and home lives that you've got to be like, okay, executive state, survival state, emotional state, and put out the fires before you can actually do the job that you are here to do, which is to teach. So with that being said, our job here, and as we kind of started this journey, is making sure that us as adults, we are all in the executive state when we come in. That's not always reality. I don't think that's fair to expect all of the adults, but recognizing when we're not and how to get ourselves quickly back there is one huge undertaking. But that is something that we have worked on as the adults so that we can work on it with our students. So that's the bulk of the chapter. Just to like kind of summarize that and wrap that up, all behavior is a form of communication. This is especially evidenced by babies. When they cry, we meet their needs. And we assume that their crying is communicating that they need something. And at some point, we stop giving that truth to our toddlers, guilty, to our children, even to our adolescents, and then to each other. We stop feeling like your behavior is communication. Now your behavior is just a problem, right? You don't fit in my box. You're being disruptive. This needs to end. Where did that stop? I don't know. I feel like that's a really big question. And how do we get back to that? But if we can shift our perspective, right, that we're going to stop trying to stop the behavior, but we're going to identify the reason for it. If we can address those issues, then the need to communicate using negative behaviors becomes non-existent. So they no longer need to engage in the problematic behaviors to communicate their needs because we've taught them the skills to do so. Okay. Now, I'm gonna stop talking and I'm gonna open it up to like wherever you guys kind of think from the chapter that you took away or wanted to build on. I have some questions, but we don't necessarily have to lean into those if there's other things that anybody wanted to bring up.
I'll just touch back on that idea of the state dictates behavior. And in the video, the training video, they do a good job of visualizing this with like actual colored film, right? And they show the emotional person seen through blue, and the feeling really is irritation, and the response is, I just want it to stop. Whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to make it stop. The executive function being green, but then when you're looking through that green lens, you're seeing whatever the situation is as a call for help, and your response is, okay, how do we problem solve? Let's brainstorm this. And then survival is red, and we've all used that phrase, seeing red, because I mean you're heightened, right? You're trying to survive, and you respond and you see everything as a threat, and so that's that response of punishment. And the idea that was touched upon is like, we as adults, we don't expect perfection because adulting is hard, right? Like life is hard, and so we're all going to jump through those states. But it's being able to jump back to the executive state so that we can be functional and we can be models for our students. And it's through that modeling is, hopefully how we see change in our students.
Okay, so maybe being a bit vulnerable here. Does anybody want to share a time that they've been in the survival state, the emotional state, and like what was the outcome? Or I guess even the executive state, we could share about what was the outcome of being there? Was it successful? Was it unsuccessful? What did it impact? Anybody?
So on Friday, I had a mentor program event, and I was scrambling. So I was already kind of emotional because I want everyone to assume that this is going so well and I've got it together. And I heard someone say something that I assumed was specifically about me. And I took that all weekend, a 4-day weekend, and I was so mad all weekend. And on Wednesday, I talked with this person because I was like, man, I need to be the bigger person. It was in general, and I took that all weekend, and I even during that mentor program, I had cried. I was so frustrated, and some other things happened, just little things. But if I would have stepped back and taken a second, taken that star breath that we'll talk about at some point, and just breathe through it, I think it would have been a lot different. And I probably wouldn't have spent 4 days being so angry at someone that it wasn't even just about me.
Yeah.
So a little embarrassing, but looking back and how I respond now and coming back and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. And modeling that in front of a kid too, I think that is where, we see change.
Okay, what's one thing as a parent that you swore you would never do, but you ended up doing?
I think taking work home with me, not physical paperwork, stuff like that.
You're carrying the load.
I'm carrying the load. And as a teacher, it was tough. As an administrator, there was lots of 12 to 15 hour days. You go home, things didn't go well during the day, you're grumpy, you walk in the door, they could read me like a book. And it's that modeling behavior. And my wife a lot of times is like, drop it, because she could tell right away. And it influences the kids because the kids seeing that behavior, they're going to model that behavior themselves. So that was the one thing that I said I would never do. Now, after leaving as a principal, it's gotten a lot easier. The stress level. I mean, commend all of you guys, the teachers and stuff, because like you said, you have 26 kiddos in that classroom. It's hard as a parent with 2 kids, or and you get to know those kids well. You know what works, what doesn't work. Put 26 in a classroom with one teacher, and you have all those different states, and they're shuffling all day long because this happened at recess or that happened, and then you're responsible. I mean, yeah. So, but
also increase your test scores and decrease
I know. On this one testing day.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of those things are out of your control as a teacher.
Yeah.
So you do the best that you can, and but as a parent, I always just try to leave work out the door. So when you're as a family, you're there, you're connected.
Yeah.
That's hard.
It's hard.
Tom.
There's so many things.
Yeah.
And I'm not in the thick of it anymore, so it's I'm reflecting back as much, although parenting adults is hard, you guys.
It doesn't get easier.
Right.
I think what I said I think, I started out, I'm going to make sure that, I'm looking at each individual child in their own right. I'm going to parent them individually, give them exactly what they need, not based on what the other one needs. And then I had 3 and 3.5 years, and sometimes I lost sight of that. And so I would, the oldest one, what worked for her, I just expected it to work. I lost sight of that, and I was like, okay, it worked for her, so it's got to work for everybody.
Right.
And it didn't. And sometimes, and I always said I wasn't going to do that, and I did. And oftentimes, after something would happen, and I would parent in that way, and didn't go well. I was realizing that I wasn't meeting. I was only meeting my own need as a parent. I wasn't meeting their need as a child and what they needed from me in that moment. Right. And that's tough realization to come to sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know if there's hope for me, Don.
There is. Your girls are
there is
great.
hope.
Yeah, I don't know.
We all do the best we can. That's all you can
Austin.
do.
Yeah.
You had a great teacher.
Actually, I forgot. I should have made that connection earlier. So my husband, I said, was a graduate from LaVille. Kenny was actually his first grade teacher, Kenny's first year of teaching. So my husband still struggles to read. He'll be mad at me for sharing that. But,
Truth.
Thank you, Kenny Shirley, for that. I'm just kidding. He's wildly successful. So there are a lot of things, and I think that this could quickly go into like a parenting podcast, but I need to work towards letting go of some of like the guilt of things I can't control as a parent, and I feel like I don't know how to do that, but I always said like I'm just gonna like go with the flow, and I'm gonna take things as they come, and that's just not the case, and I should have been more aware of myself, but. Well, we live and we learn. Mm-hmm. They're going to be all right.
They are.
Do you guys have anything you want to add there on that?
You're doing great.
Thanks.
I don't know if there's anything I said I wouldn't do. I guess maybe spanking. I was spanked somewhat as a child.
You spank now?
No.
Okay.
Never had a need to. My 17-year-old is pretty laid back and easy. He's never been in trouble. The 5-year-old terrorist, as we call her, can be quite the handful, and sometimes you want to, but what good comes from it? It just feels like punishment, which, as we have been saying throughout this journey, like we're not here to punish, we're here to teach discipline, right?
Yeah. Right. One thing too, and this is like in later chapters about like praise, and I've been working on that a lot of like how we praise, and this is something that you talk about in education all the time, to be specific and detailed and kind of targeted, but this like conscious discipline makes that really simple, and they're just like, you did it. So instead of being like, thank you for helping me, or like, you did such a great job, or I love what you did, I'm just like, you did it.
You did it.
You did it. And what it does is supposed to put ownership of like whatever they did on them, and like build confidence and like, yeah, I did do it. Like I didn't need anybody's help. So that's been
because like great job is too general. Like okay, great job, the stamp that's on the paper. But putting the you in there, or the actual action is supposed to make a better connection with the individual.
Right. And I find myself saying thank you to her a lot. Like thank you for doing that. But then what that turns into is like people pleasing. And like I'm here to serve you, or like I'm here to make you happy, so that's what I should do, and that's not necessarily beneficial in the long run. But okay. Yeah, all right, sorry, you distracted me. I just want to thank everybody for coming out today. I know it was early, and you guys did a great job, but before we leave, we've got one last fun thing, and what did we decide to call this? The
Wheel of Mischief.
Wheel of
Mischief. Did I put that in my notes?
Yes, you did.
No, this wasn't in your notes.
Yes, it was.
It was?
Was it?
Yes.
Hold on, I've got the notes.
Yes. Last thing. I read it.
Did you read it? You didn't even respond to my email.
It does say
but
Wheel of
read
Mischief.
it.
Yes,
Okay.
Wheel of Mischief is what we settled
I
on.
missed it.
I read.
So, really, what that means is that you each get to spin, and whatever number it lands on is tied to a question. And they've got the list of questions, and they're ridiculous. So,
Thank you, Internet.
yes.
All right.
Who wants to go first?
I'll go
You can
first.
have it. You can hold it.
You gotta
me
do
to hold
the
it for you?
spins it.
Yeah, but you also have to spin it.
9.
9.
Number 9. What is the best board game and why?
Ooh, best board game and why?
Is there a Survivor board game?
I mean,
I will.
they're
Or at least Survivor Monopoly.
Survivor Monopoly.
It's not a board game. That's a
Tables
card
might be
game.
flipped.
So let me think. Well, what I was gonna say. I will go
You
with.
can go with card game. You can say card game. Is that what you were
Well-
thinking?
Yeah.
I feel like that's safe.
Well, the title's not safe.
Oh, okay. You're choosing new one.
Right. So I'm gonna go with Monopoly. We play a lot of Monopoly in the house during the winter and things
You
like
ever
that.
flip a
so-
Monopoly
Yeah.
board?
How often does the table get flipped?
No, because I win. You know, Neo's really competitive at that game.
She flipping tables?
No,
Okay. Yeah, she's
no,
regulated.
no. We're doing it, but
She's regulated.
yeah.
Talk about the ultimate test of jumping through emotional states, right? A game
Right.
of Monopoly.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fair.
it is. All right.
Okay, Don. Your go.
Okay.
3. Which color has the worst personality?
Well, colors I often associate with schools.
That's an easy choice then. School
Red.
down south.
Red.
Gosh, worst personality. Well, although we're all using it, it's probably gray because it seems like it's moody and cloudy and not,
Yeah.
not fun. So I'd say gray.
It's a good answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
That's good.
Okay, I think we are all wrapped up. So thank you for tuning in to episode 2 of Mindful Mischief. Until next time,
Stay mindful.
stay mischievous.
Stay connected.